Welcome to the Queer Witch Project, your resource for all things queer and witchy. I am Damona Peacock, a fabulous, non-binary, neurospicy, ordained queerdo with a fascination for everything cycles, symbolism, and patterns.
And I am Moonkittee, your queer femme, poly kitchen witch, and proud geek. Today's topic is queer gatekeeping.
Ooh.
We have a lot to say on this particular topic, but
Something tells me this one's a little spicy.
maybe a little personal experience wrapped up into this one.
Wow.
But to be fair and to do this properly, what do we mean when we talk about gatekeeping?
Gatekeeping is like the activity of trying to control who gets resources or opportunities and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It can also be like intentionally withholding information or knowledge or opportunities to certain groups of people because they're not your group of people or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I think that's pretty much gatekeeping is. What do you think about gatekeeping?
Same. So it gets that this idea of I don't think you belong, so therefore I'm going to keep you out. In that kind of idea, just overall, in the generalist broadest sense of that,
Yeah.
and the people who are actively trying to keep people out of areas or resources or events or whatever that may be.
Or knowledge
Right.
opportunities. So what are the kind of gatekeeping that you've seen within like queer communities?
Probably the biggest one, and I get this a fair amount, is if you are a hetero passing couple at Pride, that you don't belong. Now, even if identifies as maybe queer or bi or something along those lines, if you physically look like you are heteronormative or a straight couple, therefore you must be a straight couple. And that is so not the case
No,
as
it's
being
not very fair.
it's not very fair. And as being in a relationship myself where I am queer and my partner is also queer bi, but is also gender fluid and sometimes can be masculine presenting and sometimes can be feminine presenting. If they are feminine presenting, there's no question that if we're in a queer space that we belong. But if they are masculine presenting at that moment, it looks like we are a straight couple and neither of us is anything close to that. So
Yeah.
it's about that appearance. So people who are judging you based on your appearance. And it goes back to what we talked about in past episodes of people, even in the LGBT community, doing that hidden B. That bisexual and pansexual just doesn't exist. You're just confused and you don't know where you are. Or you don't know who you are just yet, therefore you must be wrong.
Yeah,
So
bi
that's
erasure
mm,
is unfortunately a thing. Somehow not queer enough because you're still slightly perceived as hetero sometimes, I guess. I
right.
don't know. But also the not being enough, this enough or that enough
Mm-hmm.
is a huge keepy problem, but really specifically for the queer community, for the
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQ alphabet mafia. A lot of people can identify as gender fluid, gender queer, or
Mm-hmm.
gender questioning, or even transgender and not be physically or actively transitioning
Mm-hmm.
and feel like they're not trans enough. They're not going to fit in because they don't fit some kind of mold. And that can
Right.
become really problematic because I believe that we have this umbrella term of queer.
Mm-hmm.
We have all of these letters that we're throwing into the alphabet soup because we're better together. We're
Mm-hmm.
better as a large group of many different minorities than of us not being able to come together under that umbrella. And I hate the infighting that happens in different
Yes.
communities, but in
Right.
the queer community, that one gets to me the most because I'm like, you, on some level, you're queer, so therefore you understand what it's like to be othered and ostracized and bullied. So why would you then, probably because, you're reenacting your own wounding, but still don't go putting that onto other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're all in this together.
Yes. Yeah, that you're not gay enough, not trans enough. And same thing
A
along
lot
those
of body
lines.
policing, you're not
Oh,
buff enough,
so
you're not
much
skinny
body.
enough,
Yeah. You're not bare enough, or you're not twink enough. You're not
you're
enough.
not hairy enough,
I'm sick of the
you're
you're
too
not
hairy.
enoughs.
Yeah,
Just in
exactly.
general.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
across the board, and any situation, I think we need to get rid of you're not enough of
yeah. And
something
like,
because that's
who's the
negating who you are.
who's in the
Yeah,
judge's chair anyway. Like, really, come
exactly.
on. I think so one lesson that I learned a long time
Hmm.
ago, slight little tangent, but I swear it has a good moral
Hmm.
story. I was, young, mid 20s,
Hmm.
and I got a job working for an after school care program. And I'm out on the playground monitoring these kids playing after school. And one little cute little kid comes up and he's like, so and so and so and so won't let me play with the wall ball with them. And I go, oh, okay. And I'm in my brain, I'm like, okay, so you're the nerd and those are the jocks and they don't want the nerd playing with them. What do we do? I don't
Hmm.
know. Because I was always the one that they didn't want me playing with them and I wasn't
Hmm.
cool enough. So I was like, I don't know what to tell this kid. And so the person that was training me, thank God, was there. And
Hmm.
his answer was, well, we're just going to tell them that they need to be inclusive or they won't be playing with the ball and they won't be playing
Hmm.
with the wall ball court. If they're not going to be inclusive, they lose the privilege of playing with the shared equipment. And I just that lesson really stuck with me about importance of inclusion. Be
Absolutely.
inclusive. Doesn't hurt to be inclusive.
I would say rarely, rarely.
Yeah.
But there's also, we touched on this in a previous episode, of the idea of compulsory heteronormativity. That also is something, sometimes it takes a lot to break out you of the stereotypes and the normativities
The
and the social
closet.
norms that you
Yeah.
have dealt with. There's, especially for older generations,
Mhm.
you have might have gone through your entire life knowing that you were queer, but you felt like you had to be in a heteronormative passing relationship because that was what you were brought up in, that was what was
Mhm.
around you, that was everything else. And
They were
so
the expectations laid before us. It was
absolutely.
what
And so
programming
when
that we received.
And so, coming when you finally do reach the point, which almost every adult does, where you said, hey, I can actually be who I am and I can break free of these. So, you may have late life people who come out who are lesbian or older gay men who might have had families, who might have been married and have kids or have grandkids. And then all of a sudden they're coming out. That doesn't negate the fact that they are gay or queer or under the LGBTQIA umbrella at all, even though
Yep.
they were performative heteronormative for a period
Yeah.
of time. And that idea of, hey, well, you can't, obviously, you can't be gay because you had a whole family. That's not necessarily true in any way, shape, or
Yep.
form.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of late in life lesbians who are over pretending to find fulfillment in a cis relationship, and they'll end up taking their kids and finding another late in life lesbian mom, and they
Hmm.
build their own family together. Like, it's very common. Again, like you said, for us older generations, it was a
Hmm.
lot harder to come out younger.
Hmm.
I think I like to believe that we're sparing the current
Hmm.
generations that struggle, but not always.
Depending on where you are in the country, unfortunately. Like I said,
Yeah.
I fully acknowledge that we are in a California bubble. We can have these openness and conversations around this topic that you may not necessarily be able to get in, say, Tennessee or Mississippi or Louisiana or Alabama or some of the other lower southern states that are incredibly religious and conservative.
So would you think that monogamy is gatekeeping?
Not necessarily, because I think there are people who are inherently monogamous, just like there are people who are
Yeah.
inherently polyamorous. It is your choice and your style and knowing yourself. To thine own
But
self be
what if
true. You know what you need to do and what you need for your emotional support and structure. And if that's monogamy, then by all means, do monogamy.
but what if you're in a monogamous relationship because person A is insecure, person B, who is their monogamous partner, can't be friends with people of the gender that they're attracted to? That
I
can get very gatekeeping.
Yeah, good point. There's no lack of gatekeeping in monogamous relationships, too. It's
Yeah.
about healthy communication, healthy acknowledgement, and healthy relationships, which is,
And what
again, its own topic.
it comes back to for me in my aged wisdom and all the
Mm-hmm.
things that I have learned is that we are all our own people.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have our own feelings, and everybody deserves to be sovereign and make their own choices of
Mm-hmm.
who they do and don't want to connect with,
Right.
regardless, like your experience with someone can be completely different than my experience of that same person.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to recognize that everybody's going to have their own,
Mm-hmm.
so I think for me, it comes down to the freedom to be my own person and to make
Mm-hmm.
my own mistakes and to create my own successes.
Mm-hmm. And your attitudes and things can shift as from day to day. Because I am currently I still identify as solo poly. I am polyamorous. I put it in my bio in the beginning, but I'm currently in a long term relationship with one person and I only have one partner. And I've been with this person now for 7 years and I haven't had another partner. partner outside of that because I haven't felt the need for it. And my partner has another partner. So, and all three of us live in the same house together. And no, I am not dating my other's partner. We are not a threesome. We are not a throuple. Using language, that's not the way it is. If anything, we're a
You're
V.
a hinge.
We're a hinge. Yeah,
A
my
V,
partner is a
yeah.
hinge. We're a V. So they are the bottom point of the V, and they are dating two separate people. And it would appear that on the surface, that would look like an OPP, that we can't date other people. Just in practicality, I haven't had the need for it. I haven't had the desire to look for other partners. Should I do so, there will be communication and discussions and things like that. But I haven't had the desire and the need for that in this current relationship. But it doesn't mean I'm not poly. Just like if I'm out in the queer community, I may present looking cis, but that doesn't mean I'm not queer. So there's a lot of those things that come down to how I am perceived and gatekeeping one way or another.
Cover.
All those wonderful idioms. Yeah.
So what about gatekeeping within like witchy, pagan, spiritual communities?
Yes. Bringing this back around to for me, the biggest one that I see it is in exclusionary events and open spaces and open practices. So there's closed practices, which I think is something different and kind of touch on. But I've been to several events or public rituals or classes, and whether it's unconscious or unaware, but you have to be kind of either a certain age or an activity level or a gender, or you follow a specific path to be able to participate in. Now, if it's a closed practice, I'm okay with that because I'm not part of that practice. But if you're doing something as a public event and you say everyone is expected to stand the entire time or everyone is expected to sit on the floor, that's a problem. It's ableist because not everyone is able to stand or able to get down and up off the floor in a particular thing. Or if you have to be a certain age, outside of, say, youth rituals, which I think there is definitely a reason for an age there. If you have to be between 25 and 30, why? Is there a more specific reason why you're looking for someone? Or it's one man and your only women are allowed to participate, or vice versa, or something like that. That's where I seem to see it.
One of the ones that really gets to me under that topic of gatekeeping is women only rituals, red tent event, where they get really turfy around how to define what womanhood is, and it has to go down to you having a uterus and bleeding. Well, you know what, I was born with a uterus that doesn't bleed every month, because some people have hormonal imbalances. Am I not a woman?
If you've had a hysterectomy, you don't have a uterus anymore, are you not a woman?
You don't have a period anymore, are you not a woman? Can I go on a little tangent?
Please.
They do this to exclude trans women because trans women have different bodies, and some older exclusionary radical feminists find them offensive. And my take on it is, in a patriarchal society, if we have anybody breaking any of the mold that we're placed into under patriarchy, we automatically fall within the realm of the goddess, because she needs all of us and we need her. And I think trans women need access to goddess experiences, and we need to be not excluding them.
And the same for trans men. Trans men,
absolutely.
I'm not opposed to female-centric or male-centric.
People self-identify.
Exactly, but however you self-identify is where you should be going, because you're going to know who you are the best, and you're going to know which aspect of deity you are more in need of being in tune with and drawn to. So red tent events.
I truly believe that we're meant to strike a balance within ourselves between feminine and masculine energies and mix them up a little bit anyways. So I think that it's best to not be looking under people's skirts, so to speak, and policing their bodies.
Exactly.
And telling them what spirituality they can and cannot have access to. The goddess says, bring all of my babies, bring all of my children.
Right. I don't want someone staring down my pants to see if I do or do not have a penis. It's none of your business.
Exactly. And I'll strap one on for you if you want.
Exactly. I mean, am I wearing it or am I not wearing it, depending on the day? You never know. And it's no one's business but myself and maybe my partner's as to what I am or what organs I potentially present, because I know whether I am identifying as femme or not at any point in time. So red tent is a really good example of what I meant by public events that have exclusionary practices. Other witchy gatekeeping things that you see.
Well, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of have a whole feelings about initiatory,
Mm-hmm.
and I know some people do it and makes them feel really important
Mm-hmm.
and feel like they really belong somewhere and that they've really been through some shit. Because there are groups that will really put you through some shit in order to, initiate you into their practice. But it makes it inaccessible for people. It makes it unobtainable. Some people just aren't programmed. They don't have the resources. They don't have the time. Sometimes there's all these requirements where you have to, travel here and do this and volunteer this amount of time and buy these things. There can be so many requirements. It makes it inaccessible for young people, younger adults, or financially challenged people. So I know that a lot of pagans are going to love all their initiations that they've been through, and they're going to love like all of their practices and all of the like accolades in the pagan world that they've received. But even some people who want that don't find it accessible. For me, it was a reading list. I was going to be
Mm-hmm.
initiated into a group and they wanted me to finish this entire reading list, and I am not a voracious reader. This is before I had access to audiobooks
Mm-hmm.
and learning that I'm more an auditory kinesthetic learner.
Mm-hmm.
But reading these giant, boring ass big blue
Mm-hmm.
bookland,
Oh
it was
God.
never gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, on the flip side of it, is all gatekeeping bad? I think the term gatekeeping itself is not a positive term, but I think
Yeah.
the practice itself it's there for a reason. Because there are some things, the first thing I mentioned, closed practices. If it's not my faith or it's not my heritage, and I'm coming in seeking to make a profit out of it, you
Yeah.
should be keeping me out. You should be
Yeah.
excluding me from these practices that are centric to your heritage, your culture, other things that I am not a part of.
I will never forget the white man who had a hissy fit because he wanted to do a ritual based on Harriet Tubman,
Herbert Tubman, yeah.
and some people of color took issue with it. I want to say Harriet Tubman, but also like as some deity, and I can't remember what the deity was.
Yeah,
But anyway, I don't need a cis het white dude coming and speaking on a culture that's not his.
exactly. That was a big one. I remember at
Yeah,
PathGayCon
that
one
was
year. But there's again that practice again. If you know, we've known particular authors who have written multiple books on multiple topics that none of which were her culture and everything else. And there's a lot of cultural appropriation is a
making
real
money.
thing to make
Yep.
money. And I do not ever begrudge people who are in closed practices for those things for saying, hey, this is not cool. This is not
Yeah.
your thing. You are making money. You are profiting. If you are teaching a class on this, you are profiting off of someone else's spirituality that is not inherently yours. And so I don't think gatekeeping in that sense for closed
Yeah.
practice is a bad thing.
Well, I think gatekeeping, like the swords in tarot, I know I like to say this a lot, but it's a double-edged sword. So
Mm-hmm.
it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. Because I do think that there does come a time where you want to only work with a certain group of people,
Mm-hmm.
hone in on empowering the divine feminine. And if we're doing anything, a lot of pagans like to do sex magic or adults,
Mm-hmm.
adult. So then you have to put an age
Mm-hmm.
restriction on. So there, or imbibing in
Mm-hmm.
substances. There are certain gates need to be kept.
Yes. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a
No.
matter of what you're doing and how, and are you being
Okay.
accessible? And I
Are you
think it
being
comes down to
problematic
intent.
about it?
Yeah. What's the intent? Is the intent to respect, or is the intent to follow human law in the case of imbibing or minors or something along those lines? What about in non-witchy sections? But what about the gay club who doesn't want to have a whole lot of heterosexual or hetero bachelorette parties? The gay club that doesn't like having bachelorette parties. I mean, that's
Yeah.
another one of those. Is it gatekeeping? Is it not? There can be debates on either side of that
Yeah.
because A, it is a public space.
And hopefully they tip well.
And if you tip well and everything else, but at the same time, it can be incredibly disruptive.
Disrespectful.
Mm-hmm. And it can be sometimes exploitative.
Yeah.
So you now have a bunch of potentially heterosexual women coming in to oogle and look at all the gay boys. And
Right.
that can
Yeah.
be exploitative potentially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really that kind of balance of,
Here's what I gotta say.
mhm,
Go to drag brunches for your
yes,
bachelorette party and tip them queens. Tip them
yes.
queens. They'll love you.
And that's the thing is, again, there's exploitative and then there's respectful. So if you're
Right.
going to a gay club because you don't want to be hit on by all the straight guys, which again, having a period of my life where that made so much more sense. I just wanted to go out with my girls and go dancing, and the safest place to do that was a gay club. And that makes absolute positive sense to that.
Yep.
Granted, I've gone out dancing with our girls at the gay clubs and you still have creepy guys coming up on you. It's gross. But it's about being respectful. I think ultimately all of this comes down to being respectful. And if you are going to drag bunches, you're tipping, it's a performance, and you're tipping that performance, you're appreciating that performance, and you're honoring that performance by paying tribute to it. Same thing at gay clubs. If they've got go-go dancers that have a tip jar, throw something in that tip jar. Make sure that you're doing something to pay for the performance that you are watching, because that is what you are doing when you are at that kind of thing. But at the same time, if someone says, hey, we don't want you doing this,
Right.
don't force yourself past there. Well, I paid for this, therefore I'm entitled to this. No, you're not. If you are in a gay space, you need to be respectful. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, you're being disrespectful, can you please back off? You need to say, I apologize. I'm sorry. Let me back off. And maybe
Yep.
it's time to go someplace else or do something else.
And look, sometimes people do need to create safe spaces,
Mhm.
and then I do think we become a little exclusionary or cliquish for that reason. However, sometimes it does become necessary where I need to set aside and just be like, I need my safety bubble of my people, whatever that
Mhm.
may be. It's not all wrong. It's
Mm-mm.
not all problematic, but it can be. It can be
Absolutely.
used to be exclusive and problematic, make things inaccessible to certain demographics. It's just something I think worth being aware of, having a conversation about,
Yes. So we've
and
talked ourselves
questioning.
around in circles, right?
Absolutely.
With this
Right?
one.
Don't do gatekeeping. Oh, wait.
Except when you
Sometimes we
need to
do
gatekeep.
That, very much that. I love those double-edged swords.
Exactly. No, we just have to think about it. And
Yeah.
it ultimately comes down to it. But what are your thoughts? When do you find gatekeeping to be offensive or
Or
challenging? And or
problematic.
problematic? And when do you feel the need to make sure that it happens to ensure a safe space?
I would love to hear what our listeners have to say on that.
Yes.
And I also just want to say thank you for listening to the Queer Witch Project. If you like what you heard or like listening to us, give us a subscription, a like, a follow, some stars. Whatever interaction you want to give us, we're deeply appreciative.
Absolutely. And if there is a topic you'd like to know more about or an episode topic you'd like to suggest, contact us at thequeerwitchproject@gmail.com or find us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram with the handle @queerwitchproject. We upload every other week. And remember, queerness is a key to magic.
Be yourself and love rebelliously. Bye.
Bye.